The world thought the Alcatraz escape was a secret that could not be solved for more than 60 years. In 2025, experts found something under the Bay Area of San Francisco that changes everything we thought we knew. There should be no more ideas or guesses. What they found finally answers the question that has been bothering detectives, scholars, and people who believe in conspiracies for many years. Did they make it? Finally, the truth about the riskiest jailbreak in U.S. history has come out, and it's much worse than anyone thought. In 2025, scientists finally figured out how to get out of Alcatraz, but what they found might have been better left hidden. An impossible escape from jail. Alcatraz was more than just a jail. It was a message. It was built on a remote rock in the middle of San Francisco Bay, where the water was dark, cold, and fast-moving. It looked like a fortress. The U.S. government sent men there that it couldn't keep anywhere else. Escape artists, mob bosses, and crooks who always found a way to get away. It was planned that they would run out of choices on Alcatraz. Still, in the early hours of June 12, 1962, 3 prisoners were not seen. Frank Morris was said to have had an IQ in the top 2% of people who are smart. John and Clarence Anglin were experienced bank robbers who had tried to run before. They did what is still thought to be one of the bravest jailbreaks in U.S. history together. They didn't get over walls or beat up guards. Instead, they moved away like ghosts. It began with a hole, one-use spoons, scrap metal, and a makeshift drill to slowly chip away at the back wall of each of their cells. Every night after the lights went out, they worked for hours, playing accordion music to block out the noise and putting cardboard over the holes. There was a utility corridor behind the walls that went to a locked area on the roof. They stole more than 50 raincoats and used them to make a homemade raft and life vests once they got inside. Even the glue was made at home with heat and ingredients from the prison. They used a mix of soap, concrete dust, and toilet paper to make fake heads to trick the guards. They looked eerily real, because they had real hair from the jail barber shop. Everything looked fine when the guards did their evening checks. The lie wasn't found out until the next morning. A long time after the men had already left, a huge search began after the escape. The bay and the areas around it were searched by FBI officers, Coast Guard ships, helicopters, and local police. Along the water near Angel Island, they found parts of the raft, a makeshift paddle, and some personal items, but no bodies. What is the official conclusion? They died in the cold water before they even got to land. But not everyone agreed with that result. There were stories that kept coming up over the years. It was said that the Anglin family got Christmas gifts that were not signed. In the 1970s, a picture came out that was said to show the brothers living quietly in Brazil. Every Mother's Day, they sent flowers to their mom, sent without revealing who they are. And in 2018, a strange letter signed John Anglin showed up at a police station. He said that all 3 of them were still alive, but that Frank had died in 2008, Clarence in 2011, and that he was dying of cancer himself. The FBI checked it out. As expected, the results were not clear-cut, so the story kept going. Had they made it? Had they sunk? Did someone help them? Did the FBI not tell the truth because they were ashamed? Theories grew, books were written, and movies were made about the escape, but the secret was never solved. We thought that until 2025, when something real, something physical, came to light. It's not just another rumor or a blurry photo. The police can't ignore it anymore. First there was a survey, then a scan, and then a strange reading below the bay. Finally something was found. Scientists and police may have finally found the answer to the question that has been bothering Alcatraz for over 60 years, though the details are still being worked out. Did they make it? There is now truth in the world, and it may be much stranger than anyone thought. The secret of Alcatraz wasn't buried for good. It was just ready to be found. Here are theories, reports, and hoaxes. Alcatraz was less of a jail, and more of a myth in the years after the escape. The story was told by tour guides like a folk tale. As they looked across the water, people from all over the world wondered if the 3 guys were really able to beat the system. The story that was told was that they drowned. That's what the newspapers said, what the FBI said, and what everyone who needed resolution believed. But below the surface, the story was less clear. Like the bay itself, not everyone thought that the escape ended with death. In fact, the first signs of doubt showed up almost right away. The men's raft was never fully found again. On a nearby beach, a homemade paddle was discovered. A wallet wrapped in plastic with family pictures and phone numbers inside was also stolen. They were all owned by the Anglin brothers. It's strange that the water hadn't ruined the pictures. That was seen by some detectives as proof that they hadn't gotten wet, possibly because they were on land. Reports started to come out over time, some of which were true and some of which were funny. One of the first reports came from a Norwegian cargo ship that said it saw a body floating in the bay, but they were never found. Someone told police in 1965 that the men were living on a farm in Mexico. After a few years, someone said he met the Anglins while on vacation in South America. In fact, he took a picture in Brazil in 1975 of two guys whose faces looked a lot like the brothers. That picture is still going around online, starting new arguments all the time. Their family was always there. The Anglin brothers' siblings claimed that their brothers were still alive. They pointed out things that most people missed. Every Mother's Day, someone gave their mom flowers without a message or a name on them. She thought they were from her kids. Two unknown ladies with a lot of makeup were seen in the crowd at her funeral. Some people think it was the brothers saying goodbye in secret. Then there was the letter sent to a police station in San Francisco in 2018. It was signed by John Anglin and written in shaky handwriting. The letter said that since the escape, he had been living under different names. Frank Morris had died in 2008, and Clarence in 2011. It also said that John was sick and ready to give up on one condition. In return, he wanted medical care. The FBI looked for fingerprints and DNA on the letter. What did they come to? Not sure. There is no match, but there is also no rejection. However, for every strange occurrence, there were also lies. People said they were the escapees just to get attention. Some people tried to sell fake relics online by saying they had flight plans or maps. Some of them wrote books. They were sure they knew where the men were. Police didn't believe most of these claims, but a small task team in the U.S. just in case, the Marshals Service kept an eye on tips in the background. There was too much proof, not enough. That was the main issue. Too many events that didn't match up, and too many maybes. If the escapees were still alive, why hadn't anyone believable seen them? Why hadn't they called their family directly? How had they been able to live for so long? If that was true, why hadn't anyone come forward with proof? Some people thought that they were helped by outsiders, past prisoners, guards who felt sorry for them, or family members. Others thought they had plastic surgery, and had become normal again, starting over in small places where no one would question them. Other more sinister ideas said that they were caught, stopped or used in a secret government operation. The story got bigger every year, but so did the feeling that the truth had been just out of reach up until now. All of those questions are finally being answered in 2025. Talks, pictures and reports may not have been enough on their own. But something has changed. It has been found that there is a link between fantasy and fact, between science and mystery. Investigators have found something stranger and sadder than anyone thought possible. Theories are about to become history. The sound that was forgotten under the bay. In the beginning it was just a normal scan. A private engineering company was hired to help with a project to build underwater infrastructure near the Golden Gate Bridge. What was their job? To make a map of the seafloor, find dangers, and look for changes in the sediment that could affect future sites. Everything went as planned until one of the sonar techs noticed something odd. At first it looked like a natural feature, a strange pocket buried in the mud and silt. The shape stood out though. When the scans were cleaned up and shown with more clarity, it was smooth and not rough. It was orderly, man-made, and about the size of a small shipping container. However, it was not found in any military records from the area. The coordinates put it just over a mile from Alcatraz, at a depth of about 60 feet. Because I was interested, I looked into it. The local government was told, and within a week, divers were sent in to check what the scanners had found. It was hard to see, and the current isn't always stable, but after several dives, the object was found to be real. A closed rectangular building covered in marine life, and buried in sand. It looked like metal, and when it was first probed, it showed riveted joints, and a corroded locking mechanism. It looked like it had been down there for decades. There was no official reason for it to be there. There are no lost shipping records. There were no recorded sunken ships in the area that were the same size as the object. As rumors spread, the project was put on hold for a while, and given to state officials to handle. After a rescue barge was brought in to lift the container, people were already talking about it behind closed doors. Some people thought it was old military stores. Others thought it might have something to do with long rumored tracks used for smuggling during Prohibition. No one thought they would find what they did. As soon as the bottle hit the water, something felt off. They thought it would be flooded, but it wasn't. It was packed so well that the inside stayed dry even after being underwater for 60 years. It opened in almost 3 hours. They finally got there. But instead of tools or weapons, they found something much scarier. Human remains. 3 bodies that are completely intact, curled up on the floor. They were dressed in old wet clothes that looked like jail uniforms from the 1960s. Even though their faces were hollow and pale, they could still be seen. One of them still had a rough jacket vest around his middle. Someone else was holding what looked like a homemade light. The third was a torn piece of paper still held between 2 fingers. It was a note with one line written in shaky, almost frantic handwriting. "We made it, but we can't leave." The rescue team was filled with fear. The container was quickly closed again and taken to a safe place. Specialists were called in, and DNA tests were ordered. Within days the proof came in. Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin were buried there. The 3 escaped prisoners, who had been on the run for more than 60 years. The impossible had finally been proven true after decades of uncertainty, rumors, and stories. But how they were found wasn't the real question. That's what they were doing in a container on the floor of the San Francisco Bay that was specially made to keep air out. Who put it together? How did it get there? And why did they get locked inside? The secret of how they were able to stay alive had been replaced by a much darker mystery, one that was even scarier than how they went missing. They weren't underwater. They weren't running away to South America. They were still there, not gone into the night. They hid in a grave they built themselves. The quiet around the Alcatraz escape had been broken for the first time since 1962. The story wasn't over though. It was just getting started. The mystery is now solved. There was no news release. It wasn't talked about in a podcast or leaked to the press. It came from a single government memo that the U.S. quietly put out, Service for Marshals, and checked it against a statement from the California Department of Corrections. The headline just said, "Alcatraz prisoners found." That was the end of a 63-year-old story. The results of the police investigation were clear. DNA from the preserved bodies in the underwater container matched DNA from samples from the Morris and Anglin families that had been stored. Dental records gave us even more proof. There was nothing left to guess. In the past, these guys had been seen leaving the safest prison in the United States. Police had said that those guys had drowned. People who believe in conspiracies said those guys lived in South America. They had not run away into the world. Their bodies were sealed under it. The finding shocked people in both the scientific and criminal justice fields. The story of the Alcatraz escape had been a mix of myth and rumor for many years. It is used as the ultimate what-if question in movies, TV shows and films. In 2025, there was an answer. A real answer that can't be argued with. But what made this more than just a footnote in history was the way they managed to stay alive, and the sad failure that was part of it. Now experts think that the 3 prisoners didn't just build a raft and jump into the water without thinking. No one thought they had a plan that was so far advanced. It's possible that they spent months or even years putting together this makeshift survival capsule that they had hidden in. Its inside walls were made stronger with metal that had been discarded. It had been set up with crude ventilation tubes, along with proof that food was kept in a sealed water tank. It wasn't a last-ditch effort to get away. It was a well-planned move. Marine scientists and structural engineers, who looked at the container, agreed that the bodies had been kept safe in a way similar to cryonic storage, because of the container's airtight seal in the cold water environment. The oxygen-poor sediment in the bay worked like a blanket to protect the dead things, and almost stopped them from breaking down. It wasn't like they just disappeared. It had been their plan to be found. They were now. The most disturbing find wasn't their bodies or clothes, but a set of personal items kept in a rusted steel box. These included a faded picture of the Anglin brothers as kids, a bar of soap shaped into a new dummy head, possibly a 4th decoy that was never used, and a notebook that was partly legible after being wet and thought to have been written by Frank Morris himself. "We got out and beat them, but we can't risk the surface," one page said. Someone else just said, This was never the plan. Investigators think that soon after they got to the pod, something went wrong. There may have been a problem with the machinery, or a delay in getting them back. It's possible that the waves changed, or the air supply ran out faster than they thought. The result was the same no matter what caused it. They were stuck in the thing they had made. 3 guys thought they were smarter than Alcatraz, but time beat them. Did they make it? Had been a question that people had asked for decades. They did, that's true, but only for a short time. In 2025, scientists finally figured out how to get out of Alcatraz, not with whispers or fuzzy pictures, but with the cold, clear truth that was dug up from the bottom of the bay. The men who had done difficult things in the past didn't run away or drown in the waves. They hid and kept quiet, while they waited for someone to notice. We're left with something even scarier than mystery now that they've been found. Proof. The end is not one of freedom, but of sadness. They got out of their jail rooms. They never got out alive. How they almost got away with it. What shocked people the most wasn't that the prisoners from Alcatraz had been found. It showed how close they were to success. The world thought for more than 60 years that they had either died in the bay or disappeared with the help of other people. But when the airtight underwater room was found, everything changed. It wasn't a dangerous exit into open water. It was a well-planned operation with many levels of detail that no one had thought of until now. When investigators looked at the box, they found that it wasn't put together all at once. It appeared to have been built in stages, with each part put together using recycled materials over a long period of time, possibly years before the escape. Every detail showed that care was taken. The reinforced panels that were welded together, the oxygen regulator that was made from plumbing parts, and the insulation that lined the inside walls. The box was more than just a place to hide. It was a backup. A bunker that was hidden to keep them out of sight while the search went on. And maybe that was the plan the whole time. The idea that is starting to take shape is this. The men never meant for their raft to become a way to get to land. It was a fake, a sign of flight meant to throw off the police. After launching it, they went around and used hidden flotation devices to get back to the capsule that was moored in the bay. After that, they might have to wait days or even weeks for the broad search to end. Once they were sure it was safe, they would come out at night and go into the city. It was wonderful. It almost worked. But like all good plans, it had one flaw: the time. The oxygen system is thought to have failed first by experts. The room wasn't made for long-term living. It couldn't get fresh air, and didn't have a fail-safe system for when something went wrong. Once they were sealed inside, they had to bet on it being easy to get out quickly. But you can't count on anything in the San Francisco Bay. It's possible that strong currents pushed the capsule deeper or off track. There might not have been any visibility, and if there was a backup plan, it never came together. They might have had to wait too long. It's possible that help never came. They might have known that the tide had changed, and there was no way out. More hints can be found in the personal items that were found inside. The head of the soap dummy suggests that they were either ready to go back to the jail area, or needed another distraction. The broken pieces of the raft suggest that the return trip did not go as planned. The notebook, which was Frank Morris's quiet record of what they were meant to do as their last move, was the most telling item. Not how we planned it was all that was written in his last post. The room was also found in a narrow corridor of sediment that blocked previous sonar scans, according to the authorities. If not for the 2025 infrastructure project, it might not have been found at all. Experts in forensics said it was like a needle stuck in the seafloor. It was only a few more feet in any direction, so it could have stayed hidden forever. Which brings up a troubling question. How many more secrets are buried under that body of water? It was both sad and satisfying for the families of the escapees to hear the news. They had always hoped that their sons and brothers had lived and even done well after they got away. They now know they made it, but not for long. The public's reaction has been mixed. Some people see the men as sad anti-heroes who are smart but doomed. Others see the finding as the last straw for people who romanticize prison escapes. But one fact stays the same no matter what: they almost got away with it. Had they chosen a different time, had the air been there for a little longer, had the flow been a little nicer, it's possible that they got out of that capsule, climbed ashore, and then disappeared into history. It was better for them to wait in silence below the surface. The bay kept their secret for 63 years. After that, there was quiet.
There was no way to hide the news after it came out. Around the world, a sentence that many people thought they'd never read lit up the news. The people who got out of Alcatraz found that being dead didn't matter. The most important thing was that they hadn't drowned or vanished into myths or faraway jungles. They were free. In order to wait to live again, they had made it, and then died. It happened right away, and was split up. Some people who mourned them saw them as tragic figures, as symbols of resistance who got ahead of the system but were let down by the limits of their time. Some people were icier and even angry. In the end, they were bad guys who had robbed banks, broken the law, and messed with a system. They shouldn't have won with escape. Still, there was a strange respect for how smart their plan was. Again, lots of tourists flocked to Alcatraz in San Francisco, but not for the normal guided tour. People were interested in seeing the rooms that the prisoners who had escaped had left behind. It was their goal to walk the road where they went missing and stand where history had quietly defied the odds. The museum staff made the walk longer by adding a new part, one showing pictures of the underwater capsule, the items that have been kept, and forensic scans that prove who the people are. Next to the famous escape map is now a timeline of the 2025 finding. The U.S. Marshals Service quietly dropped the case, even though the case had been open for years. There was no news conference. There was only a formal statement confirming that the person had been found and identified. Don't guess or feel anything, just tell the truth. However, it was a time of quiet grief for the families, especially those of the Anglin brothers. They had held on to hope for years. They hoped that their sons and brothers had found new places to live that were warm and free. They were now aware of the fact that they had not lived past 1962, the fact that they had been so close, and then died in the cold and dark, a few miles from home. Frank Morris didn't leave behind a family, but the National Archives will keep his notebook, which is broken up and ruined. Criminologists, builders, and even psychologists who study how people make decisions with a lot at stake are already interested in its final entries. It wasn't just a jailbreak, it was a plan of absolute trust, desperation and drive. In the end, neither a confession nor a chance sighting were enough to answer the mystery that had America locked up for more than 50 years. It was solved by sound waves, dirt, and quiet. A forgotten thing at the bottom of the bay told us more about the truth than all the ideas that had been around for decades. And there is something disturbing in that truth. The thought that answers don't always appear when we need them. No one is ready for them when they show up later. It was dark, quiet, and lying down somewhere no one thought to look. The Alcatraz escape story didn't end with guns or a hideout in the tropics, under 60 feet of water, in a container made by men who didn't want to be forgotten. It came to an end, and they aren't anymore for the first time. What do you think about this amazing find? As always, let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.